What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Inside You. I'm your host, Xavier Audick, and we are back to discuss my college football top 10. Now, after two back-to-back huge weekends, lots of upsets, lots of things to discuss, so let's get right into it. First things first, my number one team right now, Ohio State. Obviously, the Buckeyes are coming off a bye last weekend. However, up until then, they have two nice big wins, one over TCU, a neutral site game in Arlington, as well as a nice road win over a Penn State team, even with Penn State having suffered that upset to Michigan State last weekend. Urban Meyer's team is 7-0 right now. They've also had to deal with some turmoil off the field. Furthermore, you have Dwayne Haskins playing like a Heisman Trophy contender, although I still do believe that it is Tua Tagovailoa's race to lose. Haskins is having a great year, 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Very impressive numbers for the young man. They're my number one team right now. After that, at number 2, I've got Clemson, 6-0. Everyone knows about Dabo Swinney, his defensive line. However, what they may not know about is Trevor Lawrence, a very impressive true freshman quarterback. He stepped in there, had to deal with a little bit of controversy early on, especially with the departure of Kelly Bryant, who sources are saying could end up at UNC. However, they still managed to be 6-0. They have a very nice win over Texas A&M on the road. This is a team that looks like very much a contender in the SEC West, even with having lost to Nick Saban's team. Furthermore, they have a nice home win over Syracuse. Syracuse was at the time undefeated, and that looks good for Dabo Swinney's team. Furthermore, they've got a very big matchup again with NC State, who is also undefeated. Could be the last true test for the Tigers before the championship game in the ACC. Then at number 3, we've got the Fighting Irish. A surprise to some, Brian Kelly's team is undefeated, a perfect 7-0. Furthermore, they had a nice opening season home win over Michigan. Also, they had a nice win last weekend over Pitt. This is a Pitt team that pushed Penn State to the limit. Furthermore, they've got a nice road win over Virginia Tech. If you don't know how hard it is to win in Blacksburg, go ask Florida State. Brian Kelly's team, a perfect 7-0. Also, they look a lot better after Ian Book replaced Brandon Wimbush at quarterback. A very nice start for the Notre Dame, and very much in control of their destiny going forward. Then at number 4, I have Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. Although I'm very impressed with Tua Tagovailoa, the offense, the defense, and everything else that Nick Saban always does there in Tuscaloosa. As of right now, their one real road victory is over Ole Miss. Certainly not a team that you think very highly of at the moment. Their best road home win is over Texas A&M, and then they've got a neutral site victory over Louisville to open the season. Not the kind of same quality opposition as a TCU or as my 5th ranked team, the LSU Tigers. That's my top 4 right now. However, very much a lot to talk about this weekend. Certainly things could be in motion and things likely will change if the last 2 weekends have been any indication. Then at number 5, like I said, I have Ed Orgeron's LSU Tigers. The Tigers are 6-1. Their lone loss coming to Florida on the road in the Swamp. Other than that, they have very impressive victories over Miami, Auburn, and this past weekend, Georgia. That game, an absolute meltdown for Bulldogs quarterback Jake Fromm. They won that one 36-16. Furthermore, looking at the Tigers' schedule, they play this weekend a renewed Mississippi State team, and then they get Alabama in 2 weeks. So certainly a lot of opportunity for Ed Orgeron's team, but for them to continue to be a legitimate playoff contender, they cannot lose another game of the season. So pressure is on for Ed Orgeron. Then at number 6, I have Michigan. Again, 6-1. Their only loss of the season coming on an opening road loss to Notre Dame. Since that time, it appears that Jim Harbaugh's offense has figured it out. Shea Patterson doing a lot with his feet. Certainly very impressive the way they handled Wisconsin this past weekend. Also, looking at their schedule, their best home win coming over Wisconsin, like I mentioned. The one knock on this Wolverines team is that they really don't have a marquee road win at the moment. Their best road win, I would say, is over Northwestern, who, considering all the turmoil that's going on right now in the Big Ten West, is very much in control of their destiny and could be the Big Ten West champion. Then at number 7, I've got West Virginia. They're 5-1, coming off a tough road loss to Iowa State on the road, losing to Brock Purdy, a freshman, replacing Zeb Nolan, who was replacing Kyle Kemp. I know, a lot going on there. Then they have a very impressive home win over Kansas State. I know Kansas State isn't the best, but ask Oklahoma State what happens when you sleep on them, as well as a very impressive road win over a surging Texas Tech team. Texas Tech very much in the running for the Big 12 championship game right now. Now, Also, what people like to forget is that they have a very nice opening season neutral site victory over Tennessee. That is a Tennessee team that upset Auburn this last weekend, and this weekend takes on Alabama. Could be the boost they need if it comes down to it that might get them into it. Tennessee's schedule, if you haven't seen it, they play Alabama this weekend, then they have another important game over a likely top 25 Kentucky team, as well as South Carolina and Vanderbilt. So a lot of comparison going on there that the committee will be able to look at. After the Mountaineers, I have Texas. They're coming off a bye. Similar to Michigan, their lone loss comes in an opening season road loss to Maryland. I know Maryland's not exactly a powerhouse, nowhere near the level of Notre Dame, but the one benefit for the Texas team, for Tom Herman's team, is their home win over USC. USC is certainly the best team to beat right now in the Pac-12 South, and very possibly could win the Pac-12. A win over them would certainly negate that Maryland loss. Also, looking at that Maryland game, Maryland plays 4 top 25 ranked opponents in the next few weeks, starting out with this weekend at Iowa, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State. If they could win 2 of those games, that would certainly dampen the loss to Maryland on the Longhorn schedule. Also, the Longhorns have a nice road win over Kansas State. Certainly Manhattan is a tough place to win, and even with Bill Snyder's team not being what we normally expect from them. Then I've got at number 9, Georgia. Georgia right now, 6-1. They're coming off a loss to LSU. A little bit debatable on what their best home win is. You could either say Mizzou or Tennessee. I'm picking Tennessee because of what Tennessee did to Auburn last weekend. Their best road victory right now probably going to be over a South Carolina team that people thought was going to compete in the SEC East. But certainly looking at Georgia, they lack a marquee non-conference opponent on their schedule, which I think brings them to the number 9 spot. And then at 10, we've got the Central Florida Golden Knights. A lot of people are talking about the loss of the Central Florida Golden Knights game against UNC due to Hurricane Florence. Certainly hurt them, but I don't think it hurt them as much as people like. I know a lot of people are saying that there is a path for them to get into the playoff. I personally don't see it, even with them still having to take on Pitt, South Florida, and Temple. All of those teams right now are undefeated in conference play in the American. Still, though, I do not believe that we're going to see this team make it in the playoff, and I don't think we'll see a group of 5 team make it into the playoff anytime soon. Now, here's the good news if your team is not in the top 4, and this is truly why I wanted to make this video to talk about the importance of scheduling. Like I mentioned, Tennessee is certainly going to come into play. They, this past weekend, managed to upset Auburn. Auburn, if you look at their schedule, they still have to play Texas A&M, as well as Georgia and Alabama, so arguably the top 2 teams in the SEC at the moment. Any wins by Tennessee will certainly improve West Virginia's schedule and make them look better. Also, when talking about West Virginia, we have to remember that the game they lost to NC State due to Hurricane Florence themselves, that could have been a pivotal non-conference matchup to boost their schedule. And if because of that game not happening, there's a chance they may lose out on it. Then, like I said, with Texas and Maryland certainly could boost the Longhorns' resume. They have a legitimate shot to run the table going forward, especially with their last true test coming when West Virginia visits Austin. Although they do have a tough game scheduled against a surging Texas Tech team. That will be very interesting to watch. But of these teams right now, I believe that the 3 that have the best of working their way in the top 4, Michigan, because they take on Ohio State, and Michigan State, 2 likely top 25 ranked teams, certainly do have a chance to get themselves into the playoff if they manage to win out. Then I would say West Virginia, like I said, depending on what happens with Tennessee, and then finally Texas, depending on what happens with Maryland. Now, let's talk about some craziness. Everyone's talked about the possibility where both Michigan and Notre Dame make the playoffs, the other 2 teams likely then being Clemson and Alabama. This very much is a possibility. Looking at Michigan's schedule and who they would have to beat to make that happen, they're going to have to essentially win out. Notre Dame, on the other hand, very much has to go undefeated. If you have one of them that's 12-0, then you've got wins over Florida State, Syracuse, and USC. USC, like I've mentioned, very much likely to be the Pac-12 champion. Certainly an impressive schedule. Then at 11-1, you've got Michigan, their lone loss coming to Notre Dame in a tight game, and wins over the likes of Michigan State in East Lansing, as well as Ohio State. That would get them in. Obviously, Clemson running the table, Alabama running the table. But let's also talk about the possibility where two teams from the Big Ten get in, and I think this continues to be a possibility given Michigan's trajectory. Certainly looking at it, if Michigan were to beat Ohio State and the lone loss for the Buckeyes were to Michigan, considering their other victories over, like I said, TCU, as well as that victory over Penn State, might that be enough for the committee to look favorably on Urban Meyer's team? I don't know. We're going to find out, but certainly very interesting going forward. Like I mentioned, a lot of interesting games this weekend. Ohio State taking on Purdue, Clemson taking on an undefeated NC State team. Notre Dame, they're on a bye. Alabama traveling to Tennessee. Remember, Tennessee head coach Jeremy Pruitt was Nick Saban's defensive coordinator last year. Jarrett Guarantano looked the best he's looked all season in that victory over Auburn. Then you've got LSU taking on Mississippi State. They look renewed. Certainly Nick Fitzgerald and Colin Hill, that tandem will give the Tigers defense a lot to worry about. Michigan, they're traveling to Michigan State. Then they've got Ohio State later in the season. West Virginia on a bye. Texas on a bye. Georgia on a bye. And then finally UCF taking on a dismal Eastern Carolina team. So tell me what you guys think. How do your top 10s look? I'm Xavier Audick. This is Inside You, the College Sports Podcast. See you soon.